Breaking news in the NFL, and it is bad news for the playoff contending Indianapolis Colts. Team owner Jim Irsay told The Athletic that star running back Jonathan Taylor needs thumb surgery and will miss 2 to 3 weeks. Indy has road games coming up at Tennessee and Cincy the next couple of weeks, and Week 15 features a game against the Steelers. Taylor missed the first 4 weeks in the PUP list with an ankle injury. In his past 3 games, he has 4 touchdowns and has averaged 6 yards per carry. Heading into Week 13, the Colts hold the 7th and final AFC playoff spot. So what does this mean for your fantasy team? We have our fantasy expert, Dave Richard, here. Dave, if only we had a nickel for every single time we were talking about Jonathan Taylor and his situation and what it means for your fantasy team.
We'd be able to buy a couple of sodas.
100%. Maybe like a whole case if we were lucky. So Jonathan Taylor, he's going to miss 2 to 3 weeks because of a thumb injury. What does this mean for JT fantasy managers? Just not good news for them right now.
It's terrible news, especially since in a lot of leagues the trade deadline has already passed, so it's not like it's going to be easy to go and find a replacement for Jonathan Taylor. Hopefully you were smart, and at some point over the last month or so, you acquired Zach Moss on the cheap. And if that's the case, that's really simple. You just take Jonathan Taylor out, you put Zach Moss in. We've already seen 4 games this year where Jonathan Taylor was either out or barely played, and Zach Moss was the main running back. In 3 of those 4 games, Jacqueline, Moss had at least 20 PPR fantasy points. That's a lot of soda. In the other game where he didn't do it, it was 9 PPR points. That's not so bad. But okay, let's say you can't get your hands on Zach Moss. Do you just go to Trey Sermon, who's next in line in Indianapolis? Not if you want to win your fantasy league, you don't. Zach Moss is the one who obviously would make sense, but the other running backs to look for off the waiver wire, it's not a great list, and the guy that we actually like the best isn't even playing in Week 13. I'm talking about Roschon Johnson, who played over 70% of the snaps for the Bears in week number 12. He's on bye in week number 13. You're looking at guys like Jeff Wilson and Antonio Gibson. Like, these are not great running back options, but they're men who play football for a living, who carry the ball. They've got a pulse. They will play. At this point in the season, that's about as good as it gets. Jonathan Taylor, if you've got him on your team, keep him on the bench, because for a while, you're not going to be able to get much out of him. The other thing I'll mention, and this is about Zach Moss, he's got Tennessee this week. He roughed them up earlier this season. He's got Cincinnati after that. That's looking more and more like a favorable matchup. And then Pittsburgh after that. That's going to be a tough one. Taylor could be back by then, though. They're saying he could miss 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe for that game against Pittsburgh. Jonathan Taylor will finally be there. More importantly, it sounds like he's got a chance to come back before the end of the regular season and into the NFL playoffs. That means maybe for that matchup against the Raiders in Week 17, that's the Fantasy Football Championship. That would be Jonathan Taylor going off to help you get a trophy. So hang on to him if you've got him. And if you don't have him and somehow if the trade deadline is still going on, by all means, try and acquire Jonathan Taylor on the cheap and let him sit on your bench for a while. And then when he comes back in Week 16, Week 17, you're off to a fantasy title with Taylor helping you out.
And we see the AFC playoff picture there. The Colts, they have that final wild card spot sitting at 6-5. If you told us in the very start of the season the Colts would be in this spot here, we probably wouldn't believe it, Dave. But going into Week 13, it's a tough one for fantasy managers. 6 teams that are on a bye there. I want to talk about what it means for the quarterback situation, because they are in that wild card spot with Gardner Minshew under center with his jorts and his screaming locker room talks that we love to see. An amazing soundbite from Gardner Minshew. What does this mean for him? He was actually one of your waiver wire pickups. Was it last week, this week?
We've been talking about him as someone to stash for a while because we knew that Week 13, listen, we knew that 6 teams would be on bye in Week 13. Yeah. We knew it would be tough for fantasy managers who would be without the quarterbacks that aren't going to play this week, and Gardner Minshew made sense as someone to go and get. This is another boon of Jonathan Taylor being out, is that maybe it makes this Colts offense a little bit more reliant on Gardner Minshew's arm. Add to that Josh Downs played last week. Minshew's numbers are usually better when Downs is on the field along with Michael Pittman. And listen, Tennessee's pass defense, statistically, they've been better than we thought they'd be, but they're still susceptible. And you could see Gardner Minshew maybe come through with 18 fantasy points or so this week. With 6 quarterbacks on bye, a lot of them studs, that might be good enough to finish top 12. If you need a quarterback this week, Gardner Minshew's the top name on the list.
Yeah, 18 fantasy points from somebody who's a backup quarterback stepping in for Anthony Richardson. It's pretty darn good. We'll take it. I have to update you quickly. Right now, I am seeded to be in the playoffs in our CBS Sports League.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah. I shouldn't speak too soon. Our producer, Jack, is creeping up on me, so he might pass me there.
Jack and I talk about his team every week, so I'm pretty sure he's going to make some moves to try and catch you.
Yeah,
so
and
watch out.
I also talk about my team every week and make you give me advice. I still got to round things up, and then I'll get back to you. We'll touch base.
A couple of sodas this way, and I'll give Jack some bad advice and get you in the playoffs.
Watch out, Jack. We might be colluding here against you. Dave Richard, thank you so much for joining us here. If you're just joining us on HQ, Jonathan Taylor is going to miss 2 to 3 weeks with a thumb injury. You can hear Dave, Jamie, all the guys on the Fantasy Football Today podcast. Download and listen, ask your questions wherever you get your pods, or you can scan that QR code on your screen.